girl gang, it's Dr. Joy here, and you are watching Delivering Joy MD. So today's topic piggybacks off last week's topic, which was pap smears, right? So now we all understand the pap, but it's also important to understand HPV, or human papillomavirus, because that's the virus that can lead to cervical and other cancers. So definitely keep on watching so you can get all the details, girl. All right, girl gang. So let's just jump into this short video on the human papillomavirus, or HPV. So first, let's make sure we got the right name for this, okay? Because we don't want to be saying HIV or HSV. We're talking about HPV. HIV is human immunodeficiency virus, and we know all about that. That's the virus that causes AIDS. HSV is herpes simplex virus, and that's the virus that can cause genital herpes. So not those, HPV, human papillomavirus. And believe it or not, human papillomavirus is also sexually transmitted, and it is the most common STD. So we are doing the pap smear pretty much just to screen for human papillomavirus and changes to the cells of the cervix. So about 300 million Americans actually have HPV, but it's one of those viruses we don't talk a whole lot about. So I want to make sure you guys get this and understand what HPV is, what the risks are with it, and how you can stay on top of screening so you don't get HPV that progresses to cancer. All right, so first things first. Let's talk a little bit about the virus itself. So whenever I'm thinking about HPV, I often think of it as something very similar to like the flu virus, which has multiple strains out there. And so you'll hear every year on the news, they're saying, oh yeah, we think it's going to be these strains that we need to vaccinate against this year. The same is true for HPV. While there are over 150 strains of HPV, there are 13 that we've identified that we think can be cancer causing, and 2 that we've identified that can cause genital warts. So there are lots of strains, but most of them are not necessarily harmful to human beings that we know of at this point. So when we're doing your pap smear or co-testing, so for those of y'all who caught the last video on the pap smear, you know all about co-testing. It's where we look at a smear of the cells from your cervix, and we do the HPV DNA testing as well. So that's going to be for all my ladies who are in their dirty 30s up to 65. And then for any ladies 21 to 29 who have an abnormal pap, they're also going to get this HPV DNA testing. So the DNA test really tests the cervical cells for the human papillomavirus. And if that virus is present, it just tells us that we need to keep a closer eye on your pap smears after that, okay? For my men sleeping with men, the pap smear of the anus is definitely something that you may want to do to see if you have HPV virus or any abnormal cells that are forming in the anal canal. So definitely something we want to keep up with. So most people get really, freaked out about HPV and the fact that it's an STD. When the fact is, guys, that so many people have it, it's almost impossible to have sex without being exposed to it. And, I know monogamy is a dirty word these days, but the truth of the matter is it helps prevent a lot of stuff. So if you got your bae, just stay, is what I say. But no, I'm just kidding. If you need to move on from a relationship, definitely do that. Make sure you're being safe out there, using condoms properly, and just trying to protect yourself from HPV and all other STDs for that matter. So there's not really a great way that we have to prevent HPV except for vaccination, which we'll get into in a few minutes. So why is HPV important? So I mentioned cancer, and the types of cancer that we often see with folks who have a persistent, long-lasting HPV infection can be oral or throat cancers. We can see vaginal cancers, cervical cancers, anal cancers, and cancers of the outside of the vagina, like the vulva. And so that is why we really like to pay attention to this HPV and why we do PAPs at all. So a woman who's never been sexually active or a man sleeping with men who's never been sexually active does not need a Pap smear. So we are basically doing Pap smears for HPV and to make sure that we don't see changes due to HPV on the cervical cells, right? So one thing I really wanted to hit on is what to do if you have HPV. So if you have HPV, first thing you do, take a deep breath and realize that this is not the end of the world. Second thing you do is figure out your follow-up. So if your HPV test comes back positive on, say, your Pap smear, then you want to make sure that you are following up on that. And if you need to have further testing done, that you get that done. And if you need to increase your Pap smear screening from, say, every 3 years or every 5 years to every single year, make sure you're doing that. We know that HPV infections usually take years before they actually become cancer. And so cancer from HPV is largely preventable. So that's why screening is so super important, and you want to make sure that you're staying on top of it. So 90% of folks who are infected with HPV are going to clear it all on their own. Their immune system is going to attack it and it's going to be cleared out of their body. It's that 10% of folks who have a long-lasting or persistent HPV infection that we are concerned about, because those are the folks who can potentially progress to having cancer. So really important, if you've got HPV, you need to stay on top of it and make sure you're following up. Okay, now we talked a little bit about safer sex practices and the bad word, I always say monogamy, but those things can really help. We know that if you've had fewer than 5 lifetime partners, your risk of HPV is lower. And that's just something that, you know, is true for almost all STDs. So consider it, think about it. You know, if you're just out there wilding out, be safe. But, you know, we can really prevent a lot of things just by being very choosy about our sexual partners and who we choose to engage with. And that's not saying that people who have HPV are like out there, like, you know, living on the edge, because anybody could be exposed at any time with any partner. Even sometimes I have patients who are monogamous who maybe have a partner who had a previous partner, or they had a previous partner with HPV, because the reason we don't catch it as much is that it's not, most women don't have symptoms. Most men don't have symptoms. Most people don't even know they have HPV. So it's so important to stay on top of that screening. And even more important than that, guys, is vaccination. So the human papilloma vaccine has actually turned out to be one of the safest vaccines that has come out, like, ever in the history of all vaccines. We have the fewest number of adverse events with this vaccine, but it hasn't really been picked up very well in the United States. We are not really vaccinating our children and our young adults as well as we should be against human papillomavirus, which is really sad because it can help prevent cancer. And so I'm really loving the new ads that are coming out from the Department of Public Health and CDC talking about, you know, parents protecting their kids, because that's exactly what the HPV vaccine does. Is it protects you from having abnormal Pap smears, abnormal oral cells, abnormal anal cells or vaginal cells, by limiting your or actually boosting your immune system against the human papillomavirus so that you can clear it out quickly and not end up having cervical or other cancers. So people often ask me, what do you think about the HPV vaccine? I say, get it. It is FDA approved now for up to age 45, but certainly recommended in kids and young adults age 9 to 26. And so even if you've had an abnormal Pap, think about the strains, right? So if you had an abnormal Pap that was caused by HPV 16, that doesn't mean that you can't come in contact with HPV type 18 or HPV type 45. So still consider getting vaccinated, and you can do that at your local health department. If you have children that need to be vaccinated, their pediatrician should offer them this vaccine right before middle school, usually age 11 or 12, that's offered. So don't say no, protect your kids. And if you are a woman who is already kind of watching out for yourself and taking care of your own lady parts, then definitely consider being vaccinated. I mean, hey, I'm getting vaccinated because I'm excited that it's now available for up to age 45. But you know, I'm not a day over 21, right? I know you know. But anywho, I just really wanted to make sure that we get this. If you have questions or comments, or you just, want to share this video, feel free to do so. Make your comments below, and I will post that video that I referenced, the Understanding Your Pap Smear, down in the description box below. Make sure you subscribe, honey, because I'm bringing you all the tea on women's health and interest. So can't wait to see you on the next video, girl gang. Peace.
See you soon, girl gang. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below.